This is Dr. Carroll, and this is another video in the Python Files series. As a reminder, there's 4 steps to using a file. We open the file, we verify that we successfully opened it, we read from or write to the file, and we close the file. So this video is going to focus on step 3, and we're going to work on writing data to a file. And so the syntax to be able to do this is that we use the write method. And write is a method, and so it is called on a specific file object. And so notice the member of operator, the period here in between the file object and write. Now write is very simple, and all it does is takes a single string. And that causes a lot of confusion for beginning the students in Python. And so we'll talk about that. So now remember, the built-in function open returns a file object, and so now we're going to use that file object to call write on it. And so methods belong to an object, and because they belong to an object, they could then modify the write position marker, and they can know what file it's writing to and all of that. So where is it going to write this string to? Well, it's going to write it to the file associated with the file object. So let's talk about some differences between .write and print. And notice print is a built-in function, whereas write is a method of file object. So to display an int and a float on their own line to the screen, we would use something for print like myInt and myFloat, where myInt and myFloat are variables or values of type int and float. But to write an int and a float on their own line to a file, we would use write. If we're going to use write, it's got to be with a file object to whatever file is associated with it. And then if we have myInt and myFloat, remember it only takes a string, so we need to first convert them to a string by calling string, and then notice we also need to concatenate them because it's only one string. There's no comma here. We can't have multiple strings. But to get the same display value, we would also need to add in a space, and then there's one more important element. We would need to add in our own new line. There is no default new line when using print. And so those are different, several differences. And so to enumerate those, print takes 0 or more arguments, and write takes 1 string and only 1 string. And then print defaults to adding a new line at the end, and .write does not. Let's look at an example. Here we're going to use sys for exit, and so let's provide a file name, info.txt, and a mode. Let's use it for writing, so let's open a file and using open and give it the mode, and we've stored the file object in info file object. Now to verify that we've successfully opened the file, we use try and accept. We say, hey, we're unable to open the file, and we exit because we don't have any other strategy except, we don't know what to do. So now let's add in step 3, read from or write to the file. And so let's decide let's write my name to the file. And so let's call write, but now write is not a built-in function. We need to call it on that file object that we saved from our call to open. And now let's give it the string. So let's give it name, but usually we want to have a new line at the end, so we need to concatenate that. We can't do a comma. We have to concatenate our own new line with each write. And now that was a variable, and then concatenating and a string literal. We could alternatively just provide a string literal, but again, remember, don't forget the new line at the end there. Now, write can also fail, so let's update our message here to say, hey, it either failed on the open or trying to write to it. If the file is already closed, if the file is full, the disk is full, then write won't work, or there could be other problems that exist too that make it so that write will not complete successfully. Let's see an example of this running. So let's look and see, did info file? Yes, info file was populated using the cat command. We can see that. Sure enough, Dr. Carroll, I lived in Brazil for 2 years. It was a wonderful 2 years. Ask me about it sometime. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out my other videos in this series.